Dirty side supercomputer initializing, Victoria Online, analyzing Brazilian Grand Prix, analysis complete, supercomputer 6-word synopsis. Amazing, 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 amazing. My circuits are melting with all the excitement. I need to power down. Cue the bozos.
Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that is Rob. Today was the Brazil GP. This weekend was an amazing weekend from Brazil. Rob, man, tell everyone what they can expect on this episode.
I will. I've just had to wake up from the nap that I had to take after the race because I feel totally spent after this weekend. And being as we've got the World Cup coming up, and I know you probably don't follow soccer that much, but I think very soon it'll be England versus USA. But anyway, one of the big teams in the World Cup is Brazil. The commentary team over there, whenever there's a game on, is famous for something, which I think actually sums up my feeling for this entire Brazilian Grand Prix weekend. So Brian, if you could hit up a 10-second, 15-second clip of how I viewed this entire weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just brilliant. It was, we'll get there, but it just had everything. It had everything. So anyway, before we get there, let's quickly round up what we're going to do. We got news and social, which is very, very light this week, which is great because we've got so much stuff to talk about for everything else. We've got our review of both sprint race and main race.
And qualy before it.
Oh, and qualy, yeah.
Which was great.
Oh,
it started off great.
And then we've got DRS with guest Mike, who's really lucky to be in an absolute banger of a week because he was great and this race was great. And then we've got a preview of both the final race of the season in Abu Dhabi, which will also coincide with our 50th episode. 50th? Yeah. How the heck have us bozos done 50 episodes?
Well, we talk into a little machine, and then it goes out to the web, and then we talk into it the next time, and onwards.
Anyway, to repeat 49 times, and here we are, right?
Exactly. It was a relatively, it felt like, quiet week leading up to the Brazil weekend. I don't want to say nothing happened. A lot of talk about Pierre Gasly and his points situation, the points on his license, where he was getting close to a race ban and moving to Alpine. He obviously doesn't want to be teetering on the edge of losing a race early in his Alpine career. So when he got kind of pulled for some slow driving, I think it was in practice. I can't remember at this point. Everyone's like, oh, he's doing it on purpose. So he misses the last race at Abu Dhabi and he starts fresh with Alpine with a cleaned off license. Now he hasn't. Other people have gotten points. We'll talk about those from the race weekend. But it was kind of fun listening to is Pierre trying to purposely get a race ban? But yeah, I mean, I really didn't have a lot of other things from the week before, we get to Brazil. Did you?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, other than, anybody that follows us on our social feed will have seen that me and you got together in person, which was pretty cool because we don't get together in person very often. And we also saw James Bond's car.
Which was brilliant.
That was amazing. That was like my highlight of the week. I know we were supposed to be loving the fact that we could go up on the rooftop terrace of the Spy Museum and see the Capitol and all the sights of DC, but the sights for DC were downstairs on that DB5. Oh.
And I got to ask what was wrong with my picture of the car? I don't understand what I did so wrong. He said
you were in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that made it better. It was a DB5 Plus is what that was. But anyway, there were a couple videos to highlight, and we're doing a better job getting these in the podcast notes. So if you want to check them, they should just be on your platform's notes for the week. First off, I mean, the amount of scouring of the internet that I do for all of us dirty siders. I'm back at the Hilton Honors channel again, baby. And it gets no finer than Lando Norris preparing a suite for a VIP guest's arrival. HiltonHonorsChannel.com. Yeah, baby. It's 1 minute and 15 seconds, but I found it. It's worth it. It's not great, but check it out. Lollipop Man, Rob has, I think, an inappropriate crush on the creator of Lollipop Man videos. They are funny, But normally Rob is the biggest fan. However, this week, the Cool Down Room, episode 2, I actually thought it was funny. And I was with Rob, and he goes, yeah, it was okay. You didn't like this one as much?
I did. I just felt there were only really 2 jokes in this one, and he kind of rode it out for much longer than he normally does. So it was good, but when the bar is so high, it's difficult to hit the bar every single time. So it's not to say I didn't enjoy it, but I wouldn't have put it up there with one of his best.
I agree.
I know you loved the cost cap.
I did. It was. I wish we had thought of that a long time ago.
Joke.
It was. It literally is a cap with the word cost on it. I'm like, F yeah, man, that's fantastic. So, and then they got a little bit of the NASCAR Chastain wall riding in there too. And then the last thing, which is really not technically an F1 video, however, it kind of is, and let me explain why. I went to the Nürburgring channel, because why not? And they had the Mercedes AMG 1 set the new production car record for the Nürburgring lap at 6 minutes, 35 seconds. And it blew away most of the other production car records. And for anyone who doesn't know, about 47 years ago, Mercedes started Project 1. Seriously, it was 6-7 years ago they announced it. 8 maybe. It's basically taking the F1 engine, sort of the V6 turbo hybrid, and putting it into a road car. And we've all seen how temperamental these engines are. So Mercedes had the idea that they could make it, tame it for the road. And they're now, on the verge, if they haven't already, delivering customer production cars. They're in production. These are cars that are being created, and so they ran it around the Nürburgring. It was unbelievably fast and scary. I watched the onboard. I think I soiled myself like 4 times. It was, if you're into like fast road cars, or you kind of want to learn more about the AMG 1, it used to be called Project 1 because it was like, seriously, it was like a 6-year project. Check it out. Nürburgring channel, easy for me to say. 6 minutes, 35 seconds. That is fast. Anyway.
And that's that for news and stuff. Literally, like we said, nothing happened. We were away on a business trip, so you didn't get a chance too much to plumb the depths of the internet, but you still found the Hilton Honors channel video, so well done. Kudos to you, Brian. And that brought us kind of right up to race weekend. So I watched practice, you didn't. You sent me a note because you were trying to sort your fantasy out and said,
desperate.
What happened to Mick? How come he's so much faster than K-Mag? I sent you back a 2 or 3 word response, was because he's better.
I furiously go into my fantasy team, remove Kevin Magnussen, put in Mick, and I'm like, thanks, Rob. Appreciate the help.
Which now, as we will take this journey through, ebbs and flows between peaks and troughs.
Yeah, very much so. So,
because it's a sprint weekend, that's it. That's the single shot at practice, and we go straight into quali for the sprint race. And as Brazil does, Brazil delivers us up some unpredictable weather scenarios.
Well, and
which I know you are a number 1 fan of.
I am, especially in quali. I love it. Let the race be the race. But if you're going to make some kind of weather situation occur, make it happen in quali. And it was spitting like the whole time. And I'm watching this thing, and it's like people were just building up the courage to go faster and faster. Q1, oh man, Pierre was the first to go to slicks. He pops on top of the leaderboard. Everyone starts coming in to get out of inters. And then the first whiff of Ferrari problems from a strategic perspective occurred in Q1. Now, it wasn't a big deal, but they cut to the pits, and Charles was sitting up on jacks with no tires for what seemed like 2 minutes. And people are running around looking for tires. They're bringing out soft slicks, then they bring them back, and then they come back with inters, and then they bring them back. And he's just sitting there, and I know it's quali, and you have time to debate this stuff, and often you're in the garage, but it was the beginning of Ferrari's masterclass in how to screw up quali.
Yeah, and what we also saw was, like, I'm not sure for a long time I can remember the leaderboard in quali, like, changing so frequently.
Yeah.
Literally, it should have had one of those kind of like warnings that the rapid light movement can cause distress, because the board was like say Gasly goes in at number 1, like Mick's up there, loads of people are out of sequence up there because no one can be quite sure where the grip is, and then a couple of people do exploratory runs and seem to kind of get comfortable where things are, and suddenly everybody who was safe like 10 seconds ago is suddenly down the bottom. And my advice to you to pick Mick, he got caught out on, I think, wrong time out on track as he went out, put a lap in, and then everyone else realised where the grip was, plus drying track maybe, and they were all just able to kind of go and throw it in. So we lost Mick, Yuki, Valtteri, Zhou, and Latifi. I mean,
Valtteri was a big surprise. Oh, but
Alphas looked good and had pace, and then it was. If you played chicken and waited until the last possible minute to go out, you literally just got the lap time come to you, I think.
I think he even said it was a bit his call, the timing as well, and a few other components. Don't worry, Valtteri recovered and had an amazing rest of the weekend. But, then the risk and the weather going into Q2 people were smashing laps in again. It felt, like you said, the leaderboard's changing. It felt like you ever go to, in a train station, and even if it's modern, but they have the old kind of flickering boards.
Yes.
Tick, 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 tick. That's what I was you're just watching everything change, like you said. I'm like, I don't know what train I'm getting on here. And
I loved it when the commentary team kind of pointed out, I don't even know which pit wall it was that did it. It might have been Mercedes, I'm not sure. But they were like saying with all the high-tech equipment they've got and radars and
Horner
everything.
Even.
Was it? No, it wasn't Horner. Was it Horner? Anyway, let's explain what it was first, and then people can correct us, right? Somebody put their hand out outside of the roof of the pit wall to kind of basically feel if it was raining, because it's kind of like, they were like, as much technology as you can have, nothing beats the good old-fashioned handout.
Or calling Ruben's grandma, as we talked about on this here podcast last week. I told you what to do. Nobody listened. We should be running strategy for an F1 team. But yeah, and then halfway through, not only did it get darker and you could clearly see it was getting wetter, but then even George says, my visor's getting wet. Well, thanks, George. Appreciate that. But the cameras are getting wet, and but people are still running around on slicks, right? And they were making it work. And we lost Lance, Danny, Seb, Pierre, and Alex. And so then we get to Q3. And now it's becoming a rain gamble. We need the banker laps, right? You got to get something in. And you go out there, and it's a dash to get these laps in. And should you go out on inters or slicks, everybody lines up everyone is now lining up, right, at the end of the pit exit to get out there, waiting for the light to turn green. They are literally lined up. And
yeah, go on. Sorry, finish.
And every car is on soft tires, on slicks. Everybody except our friend Charles. And so he gets out there, and it was the best. He basically radioed back in, effectively saying, "Am I the only one on inters?"
Question.
And the answer was, yes, you were all alone on inters. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying, just before we get out into what happened on that lap then, is that they were talking about how being last in the constructors last year played massively into Haas here because they're the furthest down the pit lane, technically the worst in terms of you're the last one when you're coming in to make your pit stop. You have to go the furthest down to pull in. But when you want to pull out and be the first one out on track to get a banker lap in, K-Mag was straight out there ahead of everybody. So they played that one beautifully. Now, you watched Charles trundle round on inters, right?
Yeah,
that rain that they're really hoping for doesn't come, right?
Right.
Why does he stay out and get that lap in?
I don't know. Why didn't he come right back in immediately on his out lap and get slicks? I don't know. He put that lap in, and it was terrible. And he ruined, I think, Checo's lap behind him. So he ruined his own lap. He ruined Checo's lap by being on the wrong tires. And I got to just say something here. So we all know what's about to happen. If you watched it, you know. If you didn't, well, then we appreciate you listening to us first before watching the race. But, so Kevin Magnussen puts in the best lap. They all get effectively one hot lap in, maybe two. I can't remember if someone got a second. But Kevin... Which
we just have to give kudos to Kevin here.
Yes, that's my point. He earned it.
Okay.
He earned it.
So what? 19 out of 20 cars go out on slicks, and K-Mag is the fastest.
Well, 10 because we're in Q3.
Oh, sorry, 10 cars go out, right?
Yeah.
9 on slicks, just Charles on inters, which means that it's not like 9 went out on inters and just K-Mag went out on slicks, right? So
correct.
After this one flying lap from everybody plus Charles,
right.
K-Mag is legitimately provisional pole at the moment.
Has the best lap. He earned it, had the best lap. Let's not pretend like some weirdo situation happened where he was the only one who got a lap in. No, as you said, everyone except Charles got a lap in on slicks, and Kevin was in front. And then George lost control of his car, beached it in the gravel, and as they were recovering the car, the rain arrived, and that was going to be it, man.
Big time rain.
Yeah, that was it. No more runs on slicks, and Kevin is going to get the pole. That's amazing. How cool was that?
Almost as cool as his face, his cross-eyed smiley face through his visor when it was all becoming clear that no one was going to beat this time, and no one wanted to celebrate too early. So it kind of, you could see it building the like crescendo of excitement in the Haas garage, where it got down to like 2 minutes to go, 1 minute 30 to go, and they were like, "We've got pole," and everyone's still kind of like, "Oh, have we?" And who went out? Did Max go out for a run on Inters?
No, it was Hamilton took one last, but who took one first? Was it Checo?
Maybe. I thought it was a Red Bull. So
I think it was Checo.
And you're like, you can imagine, you can sense the nervousness in the Haas garage. You're like, there's no way these guys can be faster than us on Inters, right? And then neither of those two actually finished their lap, right? They both aborted and came in. And now Haas team garage is just kind of like just waiting to explode. Oh, it was so good.
It was so great. I mean, that's why I love F1. Something like that where a guy, and we do have a couple stats. We'll explain why this is so fantastic. We're going to play, we haven't had this one version in a while here.
Looking for snaps and my friend, you've come to the right place. Snap, snap.
But yeah, Brazil quali edition. So Kevin Magnussen took his and his team's career first pole position. But with the sprint that came the next day, they weren't even guaranteed a front row start, and they didn't get one for the race. Haas took their first pole in their 143rd Grand Prix weekend, the longest ever stretch, beating by a mile BAR's 87 Grand Prix. And for Kevin, it was the 140th Grand Prix, the third longest wait for pole in F1 history after Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz, who took their first poles this year. So how amazing is that? With 3 of the longer runs to get their first poles, and when they get them, 3 of the longest runs, all done this year. I love it.
I was just so happy for K-Mag, for Haas. It was just awesome. So it was just such a feel-good moment. You knew it wasn't gonna last in the sprint. And fair play to K-Mag. He held on for longer than I was expecting.
Yes.
I'm thinking he's given it up in the first corner. I got to be honest. I was thinking first corner lunge down the inside and K-Mag loses the lead. But he didn't.
I'll be honest, I was at the flip. I was afraid he was going to be up there in the front with his elbows out, trying to defend the whole way. You know what I mean? Like getting in people's ways and stuff. No, he was great. He had a great start. He raced beautifully. I don't think you could ask for anything more from Kevin in the weekend as a whole, quite honestly.
No, agree. So anyway, the sprint race was actually a good one for once, rather than some kind of processional.
It was a great
kind of
race.
like everyone stay in their position. We got some proper racing going on. We had the Alpines coming together.
Oh God, they do not like each other. If anyone thought things were going well at Alpine, you are wrong, man. Esteban and Fernando were getting very spicy with each other. Contact early in the sprint race. They're both yelling at each other, but don't worry, they're going to make more contact again soon.
George is all over the back of Max and everything. It's like there's incidents going on everywhere, but the good old TV directors couldn't keep up with what was going on. We actually didn't see Max get past K-Mag. But, you know, I don't know how many laps into the sprint that was, but that was inevitable. We knew K-Mag was going to get caught. And then it was just kind of like dominoes. It was just kind of the next car came up to K-Mag and got it, and the next one came. So felt like pretty soon he was down to 5th, and I'm thinking, it's only 8 places for points in a sprint. I'm kind of looking down the field to see who's next up that's probably going to gobble him up. And I'm trying to work out at this point whether or not I thought he could get a point and hold on. So yeah.
Well, and then Fernando came into the pits during this terrible TV direction, and we didn't see him come in. We knew he had damage, right? He'd had the side by side with Esteban, which I personally, from this fan's point of view, thought was 50-50. I thought it was a racing incident, that first one. But the second one on the straight, the pit straight, when basically Fernando ran up his trumpet, right? I mean, he got right behind him, and then Esteban barely moved at all, if he did. And then Fernando broke his wing off on his rear tire. I'm like, bro, I mean, what are you doing? You got to leave some. You ran into him.
It was hardly who was in Cota. It was Stroll that moved over into Alonso, right?
Yeah, Stroll will do that again later. Yeah.
In Cota, that was a blatant move across by Stroll, and that launched Alonso. This was Alonso like, right, what you doing? You're going to run into the back of him. Alonso, move. You're going to, what you done?
I really wanted to. He wanted to maximize the toe to the fullest extent. He's trying to hitch his nose onto the gearbox of Esteban and lost his wing. So Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. That was the beginning of a spicy weekend for Alpine, and then same for Aston Martin fighting each other. And at this point, Lance pulled a Lance. This is like the second time in a couple races where he just cut someone off at the last minute across the track, ran Seb onto the grass. I heard a joke. Seb's a big environmentalist. He must have enjoyed being on the grass. But so it was just amazing watching these guys fighting each other. And Lance did get a 10-second penalty for that because it was pretty bad. And I think it was Brundle or somebody said that he might have even gotten off a little easy with just a 10 because he ran Seb off the track.
He did. And then came a series of sort of coming up to about midway through the sprint race, so like 12 out of 24. And now comes a series of 3 laps or so where this was like the foreshadowing for what was going to happen today, right? So
yep.
I couldn't believe this pace differential where we've got George hunting Max down. And I know Max went out on mediums, right, for the sprint. So now you're thinking, well, is George making hay while the sun shines and the softs are going to go off before the end, and this is a great tyre strategy from Red Bull? But even if it is, you don't normally see them being like reeled in like that, and it was brilliant.
What, the attacking and defending? Laps and laps of it. By the way, there's a rumor going around the paddock that those mediums Max was on were the ones from Mexico, and that they finally ran off. But
how long have you been saving that one up for?
2 weeks. Amazing, like you said, the George on Max, it was a lot of fun. And then even Lewis was right on top of Carlos, and it was a lot of fun to watch. And then as you're watching the battles at the front, you have Mick trying to take Lance, and I'm just warning Mick. I'm sending my good mojo to him, like, give him space. He doesn't know how to drive.
Well, and let's give a shout out to Mick here with all this stuff going on and being out. Like, people risked the ire of the dirty side by claiming that the sprint was a Haas sandwich, right?
Yeah. Oh, come on.
We all know. Yeah. You don't name the sandwich after the bread.
Right. Max, Rob Reed nailed it. It's a grid sandwich. Thank you, Rob. Thank you.
So Mick was down in 20th, and he was just passing people. He had the biggest increase on spots gained over this weekend.
He worked his way up.
And
K-Mag
in the middle.
Yeah, and they reverted to the mean. Kind of, hey, how you doing? But yeah, then even Lewis took Max. And so, Carlos is on, the tires are going. At this point, I am just thinking that, as it's ending, this has been an utterly amazing run.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking the sprint race in Brazil has been twice as good as the whole race in Mexico.
Yes, agreed, and 100%. And we lost over when Carlos and Max got into it a little bit, and Max kind of got his nose up in there in the Fernando type style. It wasn't quite as bad, and it wasn't really on Max. It was just sort of racing, but he lost his end plate. Man, it was just great. And then, again, foreshadowing to what was about to happen, Checo asking for a place for Max at the end of the race. And at the end of the sprint, but here's my note. He was 1.85 seconds back when he got on the radio and started asking for this, as I took the notes here. 1.85 seconds, so almost 2 seconds behind, asking to flip-flop because he needs the sprint race point, extra point. And I'm thinking, if you want the place, then tighten it up, man. I mean, that's a long wait. You're basically asking him to pull over and wait for you. You not slow down a little bit. You might have to use brakes. I mean, that's a lot. So, anyway, and I'd forgotten about Carlos's engine penalty. So then we realized it was a Mercedes front row lockout, and with that penalty and the way everything fell, Lando ended the sprint in 7th, where he's always. I'm like, this is just, we are hitting every familiar high note, plus great racing and overtaking, minimal damage occurring as people are hitting each other, wings flying, teammates bumping. I'm like, these were the greatest 24 laps of sprint racing I'd seen. And
now we come forward to today. Now, you'd written a little note, I think it was on the Discord, where you'd rolled out the pessimistic Brian.
Well, I'd had a couple drinks when that guy arrived.
Okay, so a couple of drinks, Brian arrives and says, well, maybe we've had all the racing now and the grid sorted itself out and tomorrow's not going to be that great a race.
I did say I was going to stuff that guy back down into a suitcase and shoved
You,
him
you,
away.
you did, and that guy that turned up,
he was wrong.
Man, was he wrong?
He was an idiot.
I'm so happy he was wrong as
Me
well.
too.
So,
I'm not always right. I'm not an expert.
so
I don't play one on
the
TV.
start came off. Both Mercs get away pretty well.
Yeah.
No big incidents at that first drop down, the first of the center S's on the first corner, which I was surprised because there's normally a first corner kind of incident there. There's a lot of smoke and lockups and almost
Lando had a
hits
lockup.
and-
He was going
yeah.
for an insider, where they showed later, but it was very amazing move by him. But you're right, it was very clean.
Very
at
clean,
first.
very clean. It's going around and what was it, lap 2 or lap 3?
One.
Was it? It wasn't 1, was it? The first time round on the first corner, was it? The tag? Wow.
One.
Okay, for some reason I thought. Okay, so Danny Rick goes and puts his nose somewhere that I don't think he needed to put his nose
What was
there.
he doing?
Couldn't. There was no way of we did see later on in the day. I think Sainz did a couple of those kind of go-kart overtakes on that section of cornering, but literally when there are only 2 cars going into those corners,
And he had the overtake done.
or at least when he had the speed differential and the track position.
Right.
Danny Rick had none of the above. There were
None of the
multiple
above.
cars around him. He didn't have track position. He didn't have speed. But
And he wasn't even alongside him. He wasn't alongside Kevin. He just put his kind of nose up there and then spun him around. And then, Kevin's momentum took him backwards at this point off the track, thankfully, which he allowed the car to do, so he wasn't rolling around in the middle of the track, which then spun Daniel Ricciardo around.
well,
that was
spun him,
terrible.
smashed into. I'm going to say
Yeah.
that Danny Rick. There's an old phrase of the "you reap what you sow," and Danny Rick stuck his nose in somewhere he shouldn't, tagged K-Mag, and obviously ruined K-Mag's race. But as K-Mag wheels around, it comes back and Karma smacks Danny Rick in the face.
Yeah.
And I felt so bad for K-Mag.
I did too.
'Cause
He basically started the weekend on the world's biggest high and ended the weekend on lap 1 getting spun around through no
Yeah.
fault of his own. By the way, Danny Rick got a 3-place grid drop for Abu Dhabi and 2 more points on his license, which is now 8 points. And I think he's going to be okay, though, because those come off after a year and he doesn't have a drive for next year. So those things should...
it would be surprising if he added to that total next year.
Yeah, he should be all right. Anyway.
So safety car out. There was no way it was going to be anything but a safety car. And we got the first we got a little bit of radio chatter for Charles. He was moaning about his engine or some power coming off a corner. And, when I don't know what it's like to drive an F1 car, but I'm kind of feeling that when you reach out to your pit wall to kind of say, hey, what was that? Is everything okay? What you want is some kind of clear message. Just one way or the other, right? But they just came out with such a kind of a wishy-washy, we saw that, we don't know, we'll get back to you.
Yeah, we saw that. Just keep driving with it like it is. Is that okay with you?
Question?
I mean, it was horrible. But the restart was brilliant. Then the race just went bonkers at this point, right? So we're basically on lap 2 of green flag racing, and Max and Lewis, who else, where else, in Brazil come together. And now they both continued on. Max obviously had damage. Lewis had some floor damage, but was able to obviously continue. Lewis took the inside route there down the track and got rejoined, and Max had to pit, basically ruining his race, for finishing near the front. And so there was another incident that lap. We'll get to it next. That was crazy. I actually wrote, holy crap, this is insane what's going on here. But I'm curious your thought, Rob. When Max and Lewis came together, Max ended up getting a penalty for that. He got a 5-second penalty. Do you think it was Max's fault?
I wouldn't have agreed with the commentary team that said it was Lewis's fault. I would have gone down the middle with racing incident because I didn't think that Lewis had really left maybe a full amount of room. However, I don't think he closed the door either. I think Max threw up an inside of a gap that probably wasn't really on. He was doing one of his classic get your elbows out and see if brute force can get you through. So I think I would have written that one off as a racing incident because I don't know there was enough either way to categorically seal it for me. I know since then there's been all these replays of, I think it's Ocon going up the inside of Max at exactly the same corner in exactly the same way, and Ocon got a 10-second time penalty for that rather than a 5. So everyone's saying, well, Max got off lightly with a 5 rather than a 10, but Ocon's is a bit more kamikaze, and Max has got more of the corner, I think, in that one. So I don't think the parallels are quite there. Which way did you go on this one?
So if I'm being just, the way I read it, all of last year, it felt like Max's moves were a little bit on the verge of too much, and he ran people off, and he went off with them. They obviously changed the rules where if you can't make the corner, then you have to give it back, and it felt to me as though...
Very aggressive.
However, this year, I haven't seen a lot of that out of him, and if I'm being honest, I didn't think that was Max's fault at all. I'm not saying it was Lewis's.
So you with me then?
Racing incident. And I would not have given Max a penalty. I felt he had enough of the corner. He'd had it prior. And Lewis pulled up a little bit ahead on the way they were turning around the apex there. I would have said racing incident. I was surprised when Max got the penalty, to be honest.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, all right. So then the same lap. Then we have Charles and his good buddy Lando. And what was Lando doing?
Lando just... it was understeer, wasn't it? Lando tried to take the inside line there, and you can see the wheels are pointing to the right and the car's going to the left, and he just slides into Charles, which is probably Lando's fault, to be honest, because he probably carried too much speed into that corner. But it looked like he was going to have him. It looked like he actually had him, because for a big chunk of the entry into that corner, it looked like Lando had got it nailed, and then in the slow-mo, you just watched all the tyres kind of go, yeah, we've had enough grip, thanks. We're done.
I mean, I thought that was clearly Lando's fault.
Yeah.
He wasn't able to complete the move he was trying to make and just ran into Charles.
It was looking brilliant until it wasn't.
Exactly. Totally. And I couldn't agree more. And so when he got the penalty, that totally made sense to me. But yeah, man, wow. But the good thing is Charles was able to continue. And so I thought we were going to see another safety car, but everyone continued on. I'm like, holy crap, how'd Charles get out of that? And then Carlos, another buddy of Lando's, came up and took him. And Hamilton seems all right, start moving up.
He did, right? And it was funny. It was like, like when a boxer might get a hit to the head and it takes them a round or two to kind of shake it off and get back into it. So I'm looking at Hamilton, because Hamilton's dropped back down to 8th or 9th, I think it was, after the collision with Max. So he hasn't had to pit. But you're thinking, is he damaged? Has he got a puncture? He didn't box. He maintained the gap to, let's say he was 8th, he maintained the gap to 7th for a couple of laps. And I thought, is he okay to continue, but something's broken so he hasn't got the speed anymore? And then like the boxer that kind of shrugged it off, he was suddenly like, I'm all right, actually. Hammer time. And
I totally agree. That's a great analogy.
Yeah, just started moving back up the field again. And we just then got got battles all over the place just breaking out. It was just amazing.
Right, like you said, Lewis takes Seb, then Lewis takes Lando. At this point now, Mick and Carlos are the only medium runners in the top 10. But then Valtteri takes Mick, and then it was just like one after the other. And then the pit stops start, and Carlos has to come in a little early. I think it was like lap 18. And he apparently had a tear-off in his rear brake duct. Did you see that thing smoking like crazy?
Yeah. And until they said it was they cleared it up that it was the tear off, I thought, oh, this is not good. They're going to retire this car, because it kept going for a while. And when they thought it was brakes, they're like, oh yeah, a couple of straights, the air will flow through, cool it down, the brakes will cool down, it'll be fine. That thing is still smoking. I'm like, oh, this isn't good. And then whatever it was just burnt off and was gone. And they're like, yeah, it was a tear off. Those pesky tear-offs causing Ferrari grief already this season. Yeah,
that's right. Charles had that happen too. But then Carlos went out, and like you said, once his brakes were fine, he passed Alex and Lance and Mick. And then more pit stops start, and we see Charles come in. But then it was Checo, and then in order to get out of the way from the undercut, George comes in quickly. And it's just like everyone's pitting, and you're trying to manage strategy. I'm like, what is happening? This is amazing.
I wrote the notes in here. Pits all over the place. I've lost track. I mean, I couldn't work out who was where, who was artificially where because they had or hadn't stopped, and it took a while for everything to kind of to shake out. But it was amazing. And then as everyone was they'd all done their kind of first stops, Bottas kind of showed that the pace was in the car, and he had a beautiful overtake on Gasly. I don't even think he needed DRS coming up there.
He didn't. He's been hanging around in like 5th, 6th, 7th area the whole race. For most of it, at least. And I mean, Valtteri was on it. And then Lewis pits kind of late, and the eternal optimist in me, who's usually around, the pessimist guy, we got rid of him. And the optimist said, Lewis pits on lap 29. I said, is there a chance this is a one-stopper? And I sent you a text, and you said no. That was the whole answer.
It was too early. If he could have extended that out for another 5-6 laps, I could have been with you on that one, but 29 out of 71. There's not... I mean, could he have made it last? Yeah. Where would he have finished? Probably last, as he limps around with his mediums hanging off. But Yeah. So go on. You wrote the note on this one.
Well,
so
there was an
you
Alfa
pull out
Romeo
the-
incident, right? And it was curious to the commentators and the commentary team. Alfa Romeo pit lane incident being investigated, but no one ever said for what or what it was. And then they found out it was a team member. Was it the Jack Guns? They didn't know, but it was a team member. And Chris Medland reports Alfa Romeo was fined €1,000 for having a team member not involved in pit stops in a position where they were unreasonably close to the path of the approaching Haas car. So, Paul, you've already filed your report, but we need to know, was this you? Were you out there?
A couple of too many martinis in hospitality. He wandered into the pit lane.
I've had a few too many martinis and I'm walking around out in the pits. I doubt it. But anyway, by lap 31, it's George, Checo, Carlos, Lewis, Fernando, and Valtteri at this point. And again, the pit stops are kind of happening in different ways and numbers and undercuts and overtakes and strategy. And the new cars, by the way, we haven't talked a lot about the new cars because we've gotten used to it. The way they're following so closely and the layout of Brazil, which you're right, I got to put it, I'm raising it up on my board. Not above Spa like you yet, but I'm raising it up on my board. It was so great. I mean, like, I'm just sitting there watching this thinking, gosh, if this were the last race of the year, it's a great way to end it. Don't send me to Abu Dhabi and parade around that thing. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and then we love foreshadowing on this show, but Perez, who's kind of still, hanging around the front, what's he going to do to try and maximize his strategy? Radio message comes over, and it's for Checo, and it's Checo, plan B. I was like, oh no, Ferrari have infiltrated the Red Bull pit wall and they're going to screw his strategy up. And guess what? They did, because the one thing that didn't plan out for Perez today was his strategy. Nope. I don't know what. I think Red Bull were just having an off day, or maybe with both titles in the bag, maybe there had been a bit too much celebration, but they just seemed a little bit off the pace this weekend in general.
Well, and I think they were battling off the pace, yes, but when Checo ended up on mediums at the end of the race, he was a sitting duck. But I think they were afraid of giving track position to Carlos and never being able to get it back, is my guess. Because it seemed as though they knew they couldn't race the Mercs, per se. And so
but
I'm
surprised they thought they couldn't race the Ferraris, because the Ferraris.
No, I think they
really
could. I think they did. It's just they didn't want. I'm guessing they didn't want to lose track position during the pit to get them out of those mediums.
Maybe
I could be wrong.
No, you probably could be right. And then came for as we're kind of like getting to that final change now, there's probably going to be one more pit for everybody, and they come on the radio to George and they say, so George, how's the tyres working out for you? The final stop could be medium, or would you prefer the softs? And George comes back and says, was it all good? No, yeah, no, softs. And everyone was like, what does he mean? No softs? Or, yeah, no, softs it is. It was like, there must have been a follow-up message after that we didn't get broadcast.
I hope
because
so.
if I'm on the Merc garage and I've got to go back to the guys in the garage to get the tyres ready, I'm like, so what, we're getting ready for George? I'm not really sure.
Let's get
How
two
about we do
softs and two
two
mediums.
softs and
We're thinking the same thing. At this point, with him leading, and we're already at lap 40-ish, I'm getting ready the sound clip. This is amazing. But then he gives that radio message. I'm like, please don't screw this up. But then 44, we have Lewis taking Checo. Takes him on 45, but it was a couple laps, again, of just back and forth, and it was just so amazing to watch. Lewis pits on 49, and he's kind of complaining a bit. He's like, my old tires weren't done, but he had to because Checo had. George comes in out on the softs, and then Lando on 52.
Well, no, one thing you skipped, and this was the big, almost like in a nutshell to me as to how much Mercedes have improved at the moment, was that when George came out of the pit, Sainz was flying right up his trumpet, as you would say, and normally it takes a lap or so to get heat into the tyres, so I was like, Sainz is going to take George here. Now, even if George can retake him once his tyres are up to temperature, Sainz has got him because he's flying around that corner.
Great point.
And within, blink and you miss it, I'm looking at the interval all of a sudden, and George is 1.6 ahead. I mean, he just left Carlo behind him. And those tyres don't heat up like that. And I know, and Sainz weren't exactly going off the cliff either, but that Merc is starting to come good and has come a little bit too late in the season for it to really mean anything. But I think watch this space for next year, definitely.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then, as I was saying, Lando loses Electrical, it turned out, was what caused him to lose power and drive, and he had to pull over. He did a great job getting that thing kind of close to that exit road. And I actually was sort of thinking it'd be a real fast VSC. I thought they'd be able to push it behind the fence there. And they started with a VSC, and Carlos comes in and grabs some soft tires. And I'm thinking, all right, here we go. A little race at the end. This is going to be exciting. And then it goes full safety car, and I'm thinking, oh, my God, Brazil, you're giving us everything. Thank you. What did I do?
Yeah, because they couldn't move it. Whatever had happened on that car, you saw the marshals. They had 3 of them around that trying to push Norris's car, and they just literally were trying to rock it back and forward and couldn't move it. So I think at that point there was no choice to get the crane in. And as soon as the crane's got to get on track, that's got full safety car written all over it. So yeah, you're right. It's it's a safety car, and 2 things happened or maybe 3 things happened during the safety car period. But the first one was the fact that the Mercedes were told no team orders, which I just thought was amazing.
Yeah,
that was just
what they say. They said race each other, but
be respectful.
Be respectful, I think is what they said, right?
Yeah.
Good.
No, fantastic. And then while we're waiting for it to come back, they suddenly threw up the graphic. I don't know why. We got the graphic at the bottom to show us the relative speeds around Interlagos of a Formula One car at full speed, the safety car at full speed, great, okay, and a regular family saloon.
Why would you show that?
Well, I'm not quite sure.
I'd like to. They should have come up with another graphic. Number of dogs that can fit in the car with you while doing this speed, and it'd be 0 for one, and it'd be like 15 for the family. I mean, it was so okay. But at the same time, so again, now we're getting towards the end of the race, and we haven't even talked yet about the big one. But Alpine comes on, and so when Mercedes gives no team order, Alpine gives a team order that says, let Fernando by. He's on, better tires. He's racing ahead of you. Let him by. And Esteban says, and they say, confirm you agree. And he's like, nah. He goes, I'm going after Seb in front of me. And if I let Fernando by, then I can't get to Seb. And they're like, let him through. And he goes, nah. I'm like, oh boy, Alpine is done. I mean, like, I would. Everyone's talking about being in the Red Bull debrief. I'd like to be in the Alpine debrief as well, because
I'd like to have been in both. It was that was just like, well, both of them actually, and we'll cover the Red Bull one later. But it was just the equivalent of like me telling one of my like older boys, no, come on, let your sister do that first. Nah.
Well, the best part is do you understand I told you this? Yeah, no.
Anyway,
so then we get
to take forever to go on.
No, I was going to say there were a couple more things, but I think you were getting there. It took forever to move Lando's car. I don't know if they decided to get it completely out of the racetrack complex or what they were trying to do.
Tried to get it out of Brazil.
Apparently, it took forever. And so we only got to have 12 open laps left. I think it was 59 or so when the safety car came in. And as they're coming in, we had noticed, they let the lapped cars pass, and they even put up on the graphic 6 and 23, and that's Nicky and Alex. So both Williams were able to unlap themselves. And I didn't think anything else of it until they hit the main straight. And then I'm like, why the hell's Yuki in 5th when they show him last on the board? And then you realize Yuki had not unlapped himself. And so then they hit the main straight, and he literally pulls left to the dirty side of the track and allows every other car to go past him. He's going like 6. He got hosed in this situation. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, Yuki doesn't know how to unlap himself? What the heck? But then it turns out the pit board was right. They only put 6 and 23 on the cars to unlap. So Yuki never gotten the official allowance to unlap himself. So I don't know, we'll find out more in the days coming if that's an FIA mistake by not putting Yuki's number up there too, or Yuki should do it himself. I don't know, but it was really bizarre the way that all happened.
It was, and George led the restart superbly. Never really kind of came under threat from Lewis, but what we did have was Sainz crawling all over the back of Perez, and that was just. And Sainz actually, we probably missed it a couple of times through all the madness, but Sainz had put 2 overtakes today in places that you don't even ever overtake in Brazil. Right. Sainz was like, there's a driver in there that if he could harness it and he could do it every race, he'd be the one challenging and he'd be the number one rather than Charles, because when he pulls it together, I actually think he's got that little bit extra than Charles. And today was one of those days. He just got the bit between his teeth and he just kind of got on with it, and he put passes where he shouldn't, and he made pretty short work of getting past Perez then in the end. He started closing in on the Mercs. I thought we might even get Lewis coming under pressure, but it was just a little bit kind of too little too late, I think.
You know, it's an interesting point about Carlos. And you know I'm a Carlos fan. I agree with you 100%. It feels like when he's at his best, it's really good. But he's not always at his best, if you will. You know, he's not a bad driver, but he just doesn't have that. However, the difference between him and Charles is I think he's willing to stand up and advocate for himself and tell people no. He's willing to say, basically, right? He'll tell the team to piss off like that, and I don't think Charles would. We're about to talk about him begging for a position here in a second.
Well,
anyway, so back to the race. Yeah, as you said, Carlos all over Checo, gets him on lap 63, and then Max, they didn't show it live, one of the best moves of the day, he takes Esteban and Valtteri effectively in the same corner at the end of the straight. I mean, that was a heck of a move to get that lined up like that and to make it stick, and everyone came out the other side fine. That was a move, man. That Max he's really good. And about to be very selfish,
I mean, the safety car pulled him right back into the mix and allowed him to get and this is what makes me feel okay. Same is true for Charles, and Charles did get Perez just after Max did his double overtake. But I don't know. Again, there's something about the makeup of Max that Max does not give up until the moment that the race is over and he can't do any more about it. And he was fighting his way back up regardless of the fact that he'd had that coming together and had the penalty and had the new nose, whereas Charles just kind of was meandering, and then sort of things fell back into his lap and the safety car played in, the pit stops played in, and suddenly found himself in a position of, I could chase down Carlos here and get a podium and kind of secure my position in the Drivers' Championship. And it just didn't feel like he's got that go-get-em attitude. The first thing he does is, and okay, I'm sort of assuming here what's going on, right? Because obviously we can't know what's going on inside the actual helmet of his. But it's like, I could chase Carlos down, or I could just get on the team radio and ask them that they give me the podium spot instead.
Well, I mean,
and then bitch
trying
about it like the little girl for the next 4 laps. I'm like to your point earlier on, with Perez being 1.87 or whatever behind.
Yeah, in the sprint.
In the sprint, right? Charles is further back than that.
Further, it's like 3 seconds or something.
And he's not even gaining. But he's like, come on, think about the championship guys. I'm like, well, you think about it. You've had 69 laps to be thinking about it. You don't just get Carlo to give up his position on the podium. I didn't like it. I wrote in the notes, I thought it was pathetic. I'm a Charles fan, but it didn't sit well with me.
So obviously we're at the point now where we need to talk about a couple of different things. Let's wrap up how the race ended. So Fernando takes Checo on lap 65. And now we have Checo ahead of Max. Max takes a couple laps, 67 of 71. So 4 laps left. Max is up right behind Checo and passes him. And on the team radio, the team says if Max can't get Fernando, who just passed you, Sergio, if Max can't get Fernando, we'll invert the cars back and you'll get the points that you desperately need and we didn't help you with yesterday. So we will help you with them today. And, at this point we have, George strolling off into the sunset, and let's take a minute and just talk about how amazing George was today. Yes! And for the weekend. After he beached it in quali, when he was in third,
which bizarrely gave him the whole weekend.
Correct. Started in third and he went from there. He was amazing. I mean, he was a machine. He didn't put a foot wrong. He was great. Like, it was just a sound showing of a guy who's got it all together, and I don't know what else you do when that happens.
And also has got a great team behind him, because something that we didn't find out until after the race that I actually stumbled across on Twitter, and I went and Googled it to just kind of validate that one article, was that Mercedes had realised that George has got a water leak in his car, and they knew this from a decent chunk of time before the end of the race, and they worried it was terminal. But they also knew there was nothing George could do about it, so that car was either going to get home or it wasn't. So rather than get inside George's head and say, go easy on the car, there's a water leak, we don't know how long it's going to last, they've played, I think A Ferrari would have done that. Charles, is water coming into the cockpit? Question. Mercedes, no. There's nothing George can do about this, so let's just not tell him and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And I think hats off there to the Mercedes team for making that call, because, he like you say, he was so calm. He's got 7-time world champion, getting close, knocking on the door of DRS a couple of times, and every time...
And he asked. He asked, too. He said, are we racing or is it team orders? And they said racing. And George didn't complain. He goes, got it. And he went out there and he raced.
And every time it got like from 1.3 down to 1.1 and it looked like Lewis was getting into DRS, George was to eke a couple of tenths out again, just traded those couple of tenths. So much so, for the first time ever, that I think Lewis, when I've seen him in that position, we didn't hear radio to say the word team orders, but with a lap and a half to go, that gap went 1.5, 1.6, 1.8, 2.1. Yep. Lewis gave it up with a lap to go because he knew he could not beat George.
Yeah, and let's be honest. Anyone who's watched Formula One enough knows Lewis was trying. He wasn't giving George a win. I mean, Lewis was on it with everything he had. It was
right
hammer
up
time.
until, like I said,
correct, until the last half of the lap when he's like, "Screw it, I'm not going to be able to get him." But so Lewis gave it everything. You have, as you said, a 7-time world champion right up your trumpet on the restart, and George pulled away. So kudos to George. We have some
100%.
stats here at the end. He earned it. He kicked some butt. Amazing drive. All the George fans should be running around just super excited because this is what the promise of George Russell has been for a long time. This was it, right?
First playing of God Save the King for a driver, and it was for King George.
King George. And so amazing. Now let's move on. We talked a little bit about some of the battles at other points. Let's do the easy one with Ferrari. You already hit it. You called it pathetic. I thought it was ridiculous to ask somebody to get off the podium for you. I recognize Charles is now tied with Checo for second in the driver's title. I get that. I'm not daft. But asking your teammate who has driven better than you on the podium to get off the podium for you, I think that's silly. The podium is something you earn. You count podiums. You can go back and say, how many podiums have you? That's a real statistic. It means you're one of the best. It's not like I'm not going to be in the Olympics and someone in front of me, I'm like, hey, could you get back off the sprint? I want the bronze medal. No.
The only time I'm going to say that I could kind of understand it is if the World Championship hung on those two cars flipping round.
That's it, though.
If it was final race of the season and Charles needs to finish third to win the title and Carlos doesn't matter because he's out of it, then I can see them swapping it around. But that's about it.
But it has to be I agree, for only the world title, and it has to be finite and definite, and that has to be the solution.
Yeah.
Not a race left and who knows what's going to happen. So that's fine. I agree with you there. Can we talk about Red Bull now?
Oh.
This is the thing I've been waiting on because it drove me absolutely up the wall when this happened. We already talked about it, what happened in the sprint race, and he was too far back, Checo was. But the team told Checo, let Max by. And he didn't fight him. He said, we'll invert the cars if he doesn't get Fernando. He wasn't close. I know Max was on it the whole way to the end. It was 0.7 or 0.6 when Fernando crossed the line, and Max, held the gas to make it look a little better as they crossed. It wasn't close, and they were telling him with about 4 or 5 corners left to flip it back, and he just went nuts on the radio. He told him what to do, and thankfully, because we're recording this at sort of a normal time, here's Checo's a couple clips from his radio as he crossed the line. So here's the first one when he was being a bit sarcastic.
Thank you for that, guys. Thank you.
I'm sorry about that, Checo.
So you hear Horner telling him, I'm sorry about that, and then a couple seconds later...
Yeah, it shows who he really is.
I mean, there's like a million different stories going right now, right? There's a million parts to this. The story that we're hearing the most is that in Monaco, in qualifying, Checo purposely crashed, they're saying, so they could have... I can't remember. Did he have pole position? I don't remember how that worked out in the rain there. But regardless, they're saying it's because of Monaco. And
so Max holds a grudge.
Yes.
For last year.
No, this year.
Perez. Sorry.
This year. It was this year.
So even this year, he purposely crashes, which obviously prevented Max from winning the championship this year with races to spare. Oh no, sorry. Hang on a minute. I mean, what kind of level of childishness is this?
This is crazy.
Even if the Monaco thing is true, which I don't even know that anybody even thought that much of it about Perez's crash. Like, you won the title with races to spare, and you could help
this
your
guy helped you do it.
who's been a wingman last year and this year for you. and you can help him secure his position in the title. But
Nope, you can't do that.
No, we've already talked about this. I'm not doing it. I've told you why I have my reasons. Like, F
he's
you,
5
Max.
years old. Exactly, he's 5 years old now. And here's the thing: if Esteban doesn't want to let Fernando by, Fernando's just racing another car. And this is actually second. Max has secured the title. Red Bull secured their title. Points have changed. We allocate more points now in a season than we ever have. Races are higher point values and we have sprints. So to say the amount of points in a season doesn't make sense because it's not relative. You could say, if you said about wins or podiums, okay, but this was for 6th place. So there was no reason, none at all, for Max to have done this. Last year in Abu Dhabi, Max was raving about Checo. He's a lion, for the way he defended the hell out of Lewis and brought Max back into it before that safety car. He did. This year, at least twice, Checo's been given team orders to let Max by. At least twice. And don't forget, Checo was fighting. He was up with Max for the tie, almost tied with him for the lead at points, and second at points right behind him. And they said, "Is it going?" I screwed that up a little bit. He was right behind him, but he was ahead of Charles. And so the question is, Checo going to have a chance? And then this happens. I don't understand. If I'm Checo, honestly, in Abu Dhabi, I just drive straight into Max's car when it starts. And I mean, I got a contract, pay me out. You don't want me on the team, pay me out. It is unbelievably poor sport. It's like Max has been given so much and so much attention and so much given to, and I know he was raised to be a racing driver very hard by his father. I'm not an idiot, but the team has pampered him and coddled him and made him the number one, and every other driver's not as good. They developed the cars for him, and this is what happens.
Yeah, and it's not even like some people were giving grief to Red Bull for prioritizing Max. It's like, as long as you listened. No, they didn't. They literally told him what he was supposed to do, and he ignored it. And I think you kind of copied some tweet in there that said, I guess there is an I in team. And I think it's a quote from The Office that says, there's no I in team, but there is a me if you look hard enough.
And that's Tony Kanaan, who's an IndyCar driver, and he's a well-established driver in his own right, who was, I think, at the GP as a guest of McLaren's, possibly. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, he goes, I guess there is an I in team. Just wow. And Tommy from WTF1, who's a huge Max fan. Like, if you've ever watched him, he's like the biggest Max fan there is. He thought it was especially poor for Max, not wise to sour the relationship going into next year. And then he says, the post-race interview, it sounds like Max's logic is Checo screwed him in Monaco, so he has one chance to screw him back, and now going forward he'll help him. Yeah, okay, that's how it works. Just had to pay off the debits and credits before he could start next year. Just unbelievable. And again, like we said, it came on the heels of them doing this to him in the sprint. Woo! I don't know. Well, before we get into the stats, Rob, what did you think of the race?
Just amazing. Just absolutely amazing. That's why I had you play the Brazil goal commentary at the beginning, because that just summed up just the entire race weekend for me. So I think it's only right that we launch into some Brazil edition SAP stats.
SAP stats, amazing Brazil edition. All right. So most of these are from Virtual Statman Sean Kelly. If you don't follow Virtual Statman on Twitter, you need to. So Russell's the 113th race winner in F1 history and the 20th British winner. And as you said already, Rob, God Save the King had never been played for a winning driver or constructor at a World Championship F1 event before. We covered when we lost the Queen how long her reign had been over relative to the time of F1 as well. So that's a fascinating note there about that being played. So we had British drivers 1-2 for the first time since 2010. The Canadian GP.
I saw you'd written this one. I couldn't believe it was that long.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hamilton and Jenson Button. And then Charles Leclerc took P4 and is, as we said before, tied with Checo for second in the World Championship. We're going to get into it a little bit more here in a second. I'll quickly hit where we stand, but that is effectively the only race to watch in Abu Dhabi. Fernando finished in fifth. We just finished a bunch, actually. Ties his best result of the season. As I said, third time. He started on 17th and drove up to fifth. And the Alpines aren't... they're good cars, and they're fast in a straight line, but that's some good driving. And Esteban was not far behind him. P9 for Valtteri. Second points race in a row after 0 points in the 10 races prior. So it's great to see Valtteri and the upgrades they've brought and the way he's
finishing strong.
Finishing strong. And he was 5th, 6th, 7th most of the race until the pit stops kind of happened. And, we joke a lot about Lando being 7th. He finished 7th in the sprint. He obviously didn't finish this race. But Lance Stroll finished 10th for the 6th time in this season. So Lance loves 10th. Lando loves 7th. Fernando tries to get 5th. Those are basically the things to think about that occur around here. So, again, I thought it was an amazing race, but, we don't know what we're talking about. Let's hear a little bit from Paul.
Well, there we go. So, with around 400 airports in Brazil, any single one of them would be enough to get me out of this country, I won't lie. I'll be honest, it is beautiful. It is beautiful, and don't take my guide on this as anything, just personal experience. But once you've had a gun pointed at your head, it can tarnish your love of the country. And it's not fair. It's not the country. The place, Sao Paulo, is huge, and 12 million people odd live here. Fair to say that 2 or 3 idiots do not define a nation. So apologies to any Brazilians. However, get me out of here. Random things, you can get a free sex change here under the Brazilian health system. Now, we all know that Brazilians are certainly bespoke to the female of the species. I found this a shocking fact, to be honest with you. It's as shocking as the fact that if you're a prisoner in Brazil and you don't want to be, not that I have been, but if you are allowed to reduce your sentence by 4 days for every book you read. So to reduce it by a year, you need to get through 91 books. They don't say how big the books are. It could be Lord of the Rings, or it could be Megan Mogg. That could be more of a reference for Rob.
I don't know what that
is.
There
we go. Speaking of crimes, let's discuss the weekend here. Sprint weekend, which makes Friday worthwhile. Like, literally, the last 2 weekends on a Friday have made you want to shoot yourself. And really exciting tyre testing, where only Brian would be remotely happy about. So,
not even me.
Things were looking good, but our old friend Rain came along, and this is a horrible place when it's wet, trust me. We cannot change what the good Lord throws your way. Crimes, Ferrari, seriously, once again they became the criminal with probably the most bizarre tyre call of the season in what was quali 3. Like, I don't understand why you'd send a car on inters when the track is dry. I will explain. You have a large weather map. This weather map tells you rain is imminent, is very precise. So as a team, you decide that it will rain. And the rain will impact to the point where inters will be the better tyre. Now look, this is a good plan and one to be celebrated. I will not lie on that. But celebrate until you see every other car on dry tyres. Then you just hope it rains so you don't look stupid. This is what engineers do. They rely on data rather than fact. And the facts are, it wasn't raining. And it is dry for possibly one lap. That lap, of course, you are a lonely guy on inters while everyone else is going way quicker on dries. But he could have saved it. He could have boxed straight after on the outlap, realised the mistake and switched where he'd have minimal damage. But the facts are that even by trying to do a lap, which he did, he was actually still safe after the bizarre quick lap he attempted on inters while everyone else on dries. Until George Russell, well, I won't lie, you all saw it. Listen, I'm a fan of you losing your best time in qualifying if you cause a red flag. I think that's fair, because he really benefited on the end result. I'm not going to say he did it on purpose, that's not fair, but he really did luck in. But with K-Mag, it was worth that. That was really special. And facts to facts, he now has a pole position to his name, regardless. So, the sprint race, it was good, wasn't it? Actual racing, a bit of fun. I was a bit shocked Max decided mediums, considering what was to follow. But okay, Lewis was in beast mode again. Lance decided he hated Seb for some bizarre reason. But then, Seb's really into the planet right now, so likes grass, so, probably lucked in there. Onwards to Sunday. Sunday by name is Sunday by nature. It was really warm, when we woke up. The rain had gone. We're looking forward to an exciting race. Did we get an exciting race? Hell yeah, it was ridiculously good. Good to see Max and Lewis renewing their vows again. I thought, if I'm honest, it was a bit harsh to blame Max. I thought it was pretty racy, but then if any of you can cast your mind back to an instant between him and Ocon when Ocon was trying to unlap himself at the second corner, this might be pre-Netflix era, I can't remember. But yeah, Max was then in Lewis's position, and okay, it's a different scenario, but let's run with it for dramatic effect. Danny, Rick, and K-Mag. Well, Jesus, I mean that's look, it's a first lap incident, but yeah, it's a shame after the previous day Kevin had, and then Lando and Leclerc. I mean, McLaren have had better days than they did today. But it was hectic, probably one of the best races of the season for sure. And then the safety car at the end actually really spiced it up a little bit, and then brought everyone together. I don't know what I thought at the end. You had Leclerc snapping at Ferrari for not allowing him to spot the sights for a podium position, which in my opinion you should never do. I think a podium is earned. That's not for me. And then the same with Verstappen and Perez. So, a bit damage done. From our side, Valtteri was a beast all weekend. The last few races he's really put in a performance. So, delighted with the way the weekend went, for being honest with you, for everyone. I am glad to be getting out of Brazil, but Brazil always delivers a great race. It did last year, it has this year, and I don't want to say this, but I am going to say this. I actually can't wait to come back here next year and see it again.
Yeah.
But one more race to go, Abu Dhabi. Still things to be decided. There's a little bit riding on it, but for now, I'll hand you back over to my two good friends. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the land of a camel. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Paul.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
amazing.
Hey,
I liked the music in the background at one point. I don't know if other people could hear. There was a beat going.
I boogieing away while listening to Paul's updates. So, I mean, he must be absolutely brimming this weekend, because Valtteri has had an absolute blinder, and all of his friends over in the Mercedes garage have just gone and delivered a 1-2. So, yeah, hopefully, despite his non-love affair with Brazil for reasons that are understandable, he could still come away with a bit of a smile on his face from this weekend. So thank you very much, Paul, and we look forward to your... Oh, I'm going to wipe the tear away. Final update from Abu Dhabi next week. It's crazy. So talking of which... Do we want to preview or do we want to DRS? Which way should we go?
Let's do fantasy.
Brian?
Let's not skip fantasy.
Oh, yeah, of course. Do you know what? I've got into such a groove that we record so quickly that fantasy hasn't updated that I forgot that today would have done. So, yeah, of course, over we go.
I mean, I'd like to skip it because basically, you beat me this week. So kudos to you, my friend.
Yeah, but that's just because I mega drivered Lewis.
Yeah, you did mega drive. You beat me. You had 243. I had 231. It is your, I'm a stats guy. It's your first win of the second half of the year.
You're only as good as your last win, so there we are. So on current form, I'm winning.
5 wins for you, 16 for me, which is more.
I didn't hear anything. I'm just on about today. It's all about Brazil, baby.
Correct. And so, well then, who actually took the dirty side this week? None other than Andy T. Andy took it home, Alpha Taily. He used his Mega Drive, 317 points. Nice job, Andy. But followed very closely at 315 points by Nimrod with Mercedes. Nuts. Nice job, Nimrod. And then a non-Mega Drive 310-point whopper. Just amazing. Heidi
That's got to have George, right? That's got to have... How expensive is George? Can he be turbo-drivered or not at the moment?
No, definitely not turbo driver.
Okay, so...
I mean, I can click through, but then I won't be able to do any more.
No, that's fine. I saw that score early, and I was thinking, do you know what? With 300 odd without Mega Drive, and that's got to have George. It's got to be George, Lewis, Mercedes. Do you reckon?
There's a finite amount of money, so I don't know.
Heidi
O.
Well done, Heidi.
Amazing. All S with Nutcracker Wannabes 302. Andy E. At least 3 characters 295. 6th place David T. Michael, I just sent you an email. Toto wasn't even there today, but somehow they got him quickly over the team radio. I don't know if they recorded something.
The team radio they did. I was thinking when they did the Zoom call, and they couldn't work out how Zoom works. But
yeah, that too in the cool-down room. But David T, 287, 6th place. Vanch J, Team 1, Mega Drive, 282, 7th. Garth G, G-Money, 271 points, no Mega Drive, 8th place. Roman M, Rampuri F1 Team, 268. And in 10th, Peter G, Scuderia Gates, 267 points. Oh, I'm sorry, we had a tie. Abby W, also in 10th place, 267. Sorry, Abby. Great job. Team 1. So that's Brazil, and that with one race left, just a quick season top 10. Andrew T, Andy, who's been on the 100 seconds. Alpha Taily, he cannot be caught at this point. He is well ahead of me. I'm in second. Roman M, Rampuri F1 team, 4,103 points. Really looking good for that T-shirt. However, Balotelli 21, Red Bullino, 4,100 points. So 3 points difference from 3 to 4. Amazing. So let's see what's what. And not out of it at all, Clint E, Yuki's Potty Mouth 5th. Vance J, Team 1 and 6. Renato L, Flying Hakkinen 7th. Edward Jason S, Gunnar Stroud, Stella's a Mega Driver in 8th place. Kerry H, Team 1 in 9th. And finally, Tomas H in 10th with 3,791 points. So just amazing. A lot of huge numbers coming up from people as we kind of close the year from a fantasy perspective. Just fun. One race left. I'm not going to listen to Rob anymore. By the way, just to close that out, K-Mag 6 points, Mick 9 points. So you actually saved me 3 points. So
yeah, see, I was right in the end.
Very unconventional way to get there by the guy drop getting pole.
I know all of this when I decided to keep Mick over K-Mag as well. So yeah, woo.
Let's do DRS.
Let's do DRS. Yeah, so you'd been hunting down Mike for a while. We'd never been able to seem to make calendars work. But thankfully this week we got to sit down and speak to Mike, or to give him his full name, Coach Mike. It was just awesome catching up with him. So let's take a listen and see how things went with Mike.
All right, we are super excited to have Mike on the 100 Seconds of DRS. Mike, welcome to the dirty side, my friend.
Thanks, guys. I'm a longtime listener and excited to be on the show. You guys are great, and I'm excited.
Well, I don't know how much we have to pay you for those accolades, but thank you for that. So, as we get started, I guess one of the things we all share is a love of F1, and that's kind of what we have in common. And I guess I'd be curious, how did you get into F1?
Well, I got into F1 and through actually not Netflix, which a lot of people do get through, get into F1 now lately, but it was actually the F1 video game. My son was about 9 years old at the time, so around 2017, and he was looking to buy a racing video game. And he picked up the Formula One game. And I tried to warn him. I'm like, look, this is tough driving. This is not the typical NASCAR game or, whatever. I mean, they're not going in circles. I mean, you have, walls and you have, turns and all that. I go, this is going to be tough. He goes, oh, I want it. It looks cool, the cover. So I'm like, okay. So we got it. We downloaded it and he started playing it and he was doing pretty good. And then he played it for a while and then he would go upstairs and then I would try my hand on it. And so I started playing it and now we are like trading the controller back and forth. And that's how I got into it. I started loving the tracks and the cars. I started learning the drivers. I am from the Chicago area, so I would go down to the Indianapolis 500 a lot. I've seen over like 10, 12 races of Indy.
Wow. That's
so
amazing.
yeah, I'm a fan of racing, but it was always the Indy guys because of my proximity in NASCAR with, some tracks around here. But I really started to enjoy and learning the tracks and the drivers. So I started getting into it more, just anything I could read, any podcast I can listen to, and I just fell in love with the sport. So I have to blame my son for buying the video game, and now I am just like entrenched in F1.
I don't think any way into the sport is a bad way into the sport, right?
Sure.
A lot of people give grief to the people that find it during Netflix, right? I'm like, who cares how you find it?
Yeah.
If you find it and you love it, then everyone's welcome, right?
Agree.
So we were just chatting just beforehand, and as well as kind of having a love of F1, a bit like me, you're probably a proper sports coach, whereas I'm just I'm a rec soccer coach. But you're basketball, right? And we're gonna have.
I am. I coach our high school basketball team. Yes, I'm the JV, the junior varsity coach.
Nice. So do you want to give a shout out to those guys, and then
Sure.
boost our listenership for this episode? Anyway.
Sure. Yeah, I did tell the guys I was going to be on your podcast, and they were excited. We had a practice this morning, so in the huddle they were saying good luck and all that. But I coached Crown Point High School, Crown Point Bulldogs, and so hopefully the guys will listen and the coaches and all that. So, and a couple of them do follow F1, and I did get a couple coaches, listening or following, F1 and explaining. I was telling Brian, I was explaining the sprint race to our head coach, and he's excited about the sprint race later today. So it's going to be fun.
Well, one thing and I know not everyone can see what we see, but I see an F1 poster behind you. And so, yeah, it's always a great talking point. So first off, I shall correctly address you as coach now instead of as Mike.
Okay.
And so coach, I guess I'd say, is that a fun kind of, do people ever talk to you about F1 when they see posters like that on the wall? And is it a way, to find other F1 fans kind of secretly?
It is. I put these posters up for the first time. So it's from a calendar, an old calendar. So I have Grosjean, I have Lewis, I have Sebastian when he was with Ferrari. So when I was having parent-teacher conferences, some of the gentlemen would come over to me and go, hey, you watch F1? I saw your posters up there. And I'm like, yeah. I go, you watch F1. So now it's like, well, let's not talk about your kid anymore. Let's talk about the races. So we started talking about Red Bull and Mercedes and last year and all this stuff. And, the moms are like, wait a minute, we're here for
limited time.
Jimmy. Yeah. So anyways, so when I did put these up for the first time, it really got people, I started to realize a lot more people watch it than I thought. Like, we don't wear like F1 gear around here like we do White Sox, Cubs. I'm from the Chicagoland area, like I said, Bears, Packers, things like that. So when you do see an F1 fan, you kind of like gravitate toward him or her. Like, oh, you watch F1. Who do you like? What's your favorite team? And next thing you know, you're talking about Formula One, which is great.
It is
we're gonna have to do. Sorry, Brian. I was going to say we're going to have to do dirty side posters. I just realised by looking at that's our way in, right? To break America, we need dirty side posters that people can put up in their offices, in their schools, anywhere.
And stickers. Yeah, stickers. I found one of your stickers. I'm going to put on my coffee mug. So there you go. So we got to get the stickers out.
Amazing for sure. So, it is kind of like it still feels. Even though it's gaining in popularity and you find more people, like a very cool secret handshake, right? When you meet another F1
you're
fan.
Right. Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
and I love meeting new people, like, and talking, like they're just getting into the sport or they know more than I do. And I like to pick their brain, so it's really cool. We text each other during the race and, it's fun.
Talk about it being a secret club. What that also means is that some of the actual stars of the show are not as necessarily as recognizable in this country as they would be everywhere else, perhaps. And we were catching it with you before, and you have a super cool story about somebody you may have seen at a restaurant. So why don't you tell us about that, Mike?
Sure. My wife and I went down to Indianapolis to meet her friend and her husband for lunch. And so we were down at the restaurant, and we're saying hello. We're about to get seated, and two gentlemen walk in front of me. And the one I recognized right away, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is Marcus Ericsson, Formula F1 driver, Indianapolis 500 champion. I'm like, wow. But I wanted to make sure, so I asked one of the waiters who was waiting. I go, hey, I don't mean to bother you. And I'm not going to bother him, but is that Marcus Ericsson? He said, yeah, it is. And he was with Felix Rosenquist, if I'm saying his name right. Yeah. And so they were sitting outside. So we were seated inside. So I'm texting my buddies. I'm like, Marcus, and they're like, you got to go talk to him. You got to get his picture or something like that. And I'm like, look, I'm an older man. I'm 54 years old. I'm not going to be a fanboy and go bother this guy. And, but I did take a picture of him through the window just to prove, like, there he is right there. So as we're eating lunch, I'm kind of kicking myself going, man, I probably should have, like, at least said hi or congratulations or something like that. And the couple that we were with are kind of like teasing me like I'm a fanboy. Like, how old are you? Well, as luck would have it, they both came up and walked right by our table to go to the washroom. So I said, okay, this is my chance.
In the washroom?
No, not in the washroom. No. I
okay, just checking. Just checking, Coach.
That would have been a different story. But yeah. So I waited for them to come out of the washroom, and I stood in the aisle, not like, blocking them or anything, but Marcus came out, we kind of made eye contact, and I gave him like the universal, can I take a picture sign? And he very politely gave me the thumbs up. So we walked over and gave my wife the phone, and we took a picture together. He was very nice, and I said, congratulations on your big win and all that. And then he left to go back to his table, and then Felix came out, so I got a picture with him also. So, I was a little embarrassed the way I was acting, but then later I found out that the gentleman we were with even said to his wife, like, man, I should have got a picture of those guys also. So it made me feel a little better that, the fanboy in me, came out, but I didn't totally embarrass myself. But it was really neat meeting them and seeing those guys like in person. Like, it was like, wow, I was like almost like starstruck, which I don't really get anytime. But it just kind of shows you how much I enjoy now F1.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the passion you have for it. That you were so surprised to see them. I think you were, whoa. So strange question. We talked about how you got into F1, but how did you find the Dirty Side, the podcast here?
Well, again, I was trying to find as much information as I can. I'm reading every article. I'm downloading, the F1, website or the app and all that, and reading as much as I could. And I started listening to podcasts. So I'm like looking for podcasts, and then I saw the Dirty Side of the Track. So I'm like, I'm gonna give these guys a shot. So I hit play, and then I just enjoyed it so much. Like I said, between you two talking and then the F1, the fantasy game, and how you guys you're just fans, just like I am, and then you guys just have a great rapport with each other, and yet it's still really good information. Like Brian watches all the YouTube videos and all that stuff, and it's pretty neat that I can go back and, okay, I'm not going to watch that one, but he thought this was pretty good, so I go and watch them, and so it's pretty neat. And then getting Rob's view, so it's awesome. It's a great a podcast, and I love listening to it.
Thanks, Mike. We appreciate that. And just so you know, I've gone even further. I found another Hilton Honors Lando Norris video for this coming week. So,
oh gosh,
to watch that.
I continue to do my work on behalf of the entire Dirty Side because we're all fans.
I don't know if you saw in the last episode, we had a request to put the show notes the links to all of the videos that we talk about. So it was in there last episode. So hopefully it makes it even easier for you to go and find all the really mundane videos that Brian tells everybody not to watch, and then we give the link to.
Right. I love them. They're great. Keep it up. I love them.
Well, thanks, Mike. So before we get into, I would assume has to be the highlight of your Saturday.
This is it right
the
here.
The 100 seconds of DRS quiz. We have to say, Coach, go Bulldogs, right? Because
there you go. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, we didn't want to ignore that. But so it is that time where we like to ask some questions and get to know you on what I would consider an F1 spiritual level. So Rob, are you ready with the timer?
It's been a while, but I think I'm ready. I think I can count to 100 again. So,
all right, good.
Mike, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Right, Brian, I'm going to count you two in 3, 2, 1, go.
Coach, what's your favorite F1 track?
I got to go with Coda.
Okay, and then what's the best racing movie of all time?
Oh, the best racing movie. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm a big Will Ferrell fan, so I got to go Talladega Nights.
Yeah, you do.
Shake and bake.
There you go.
Actually, what's the first poster you had on your bedroom wall?
Oh, I've heard you ask this before, so I'm ready. Walter Payton.
Nice, sweetness.
Yes.
Is it GIF or GIF?
Oh, that's a good one, because I always mess this up. I'm going to go with GIF.
Okay,
is that right? I don't know.
I don't know.
According to Brian.
Not according to me, but what do I know? I didn't make it. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't. So what's your first memory of watching F1?
Oh, the first memory I have is, do you guys remember that Malaysia race when there was like a pothole that came, or there was something hanging out of the track, and one of the drivers...
Oh, the manhole cover thing.
Yeah.
Wasn't it the Malaysia race? And they went over that, and oh my gosh, it was like terrifying. That for some reason, I just remember that, and they don't even race there anymore, but I just remember that for some reason.
Do you like to sleep in or get up early?
Get up early.
What's your favorite livery on any of the current 22 cars?
Ooh, that's pretty good. Oh my gosh, that's a tough one. I gotta go with man, you got me, and I know my time's running out, man. I'm
10 seconds.
The turn here. Yeah, I gotta go with the Mercedes. I still like the silver.
Yeah,
silver right now.
What's your favorite food?
Oh, I gotta go with tacos.
That's
nice.
Time.
Oh man, I had a couple more I wanted to get to.
I know, I rambled on.
No. This was great.
That Malaysia race. Sorry about
that. This was great, Coach. That was amazing.
Thank you. That was fun. Thank you, guys.
Well, as always, we so love getting a chance to talk to fellow Dirty Siders, fans like us who love F1. And so if anyone listening wants to participate, always hit us up on Twitter at F1 Dirty Side, or you can find us on our Gmail through our website, www.dirtysideofthetrack.com. Coach Mike, thank you for doing this. This was amazing, man. It was great to meet you.
It was great to meet you guys, and keep up the great work. You guys are great.
Thanks a lot, Coach. That was great.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was great. And as I just said, let us know if you'd like to be in the 100 seconds of DRS on Twitter at F1 Dirty Side. Send us a DM or a tweet, and we'll be happy to connect. But now, our last race preview of the year. Oh,
well, and to tie in the kind of the the kind of the kudos of the DRS. If you want to be on the final race weekend of the season to go alongside the final race at Abu Dhabi, then
And our 50th episode.
And our 50th episode. I mean, this is like the holy grail of DRSs. So, if so many of you write in that you want to take place, we'll have to put all the names in a hat. But come on, guys, you want to be on DRS for the 50th.
Exactly. And as we said on the last race review, so going to Abu Dhabi, Yas Marina on Yas Island. It was built in 2009, or the track started in 2009. It was won inaugural by the retiring Seb.
2009. When we were researching this, I was like, in my head, this is like a mid-teens race that came along. I don't remember it being that long ago, but yeah, it is. 2009.
I don't either. And every year, I remember realizing they pay to be last. Like a couple years ago, I realized that, and I'm like, oh, bummer. Not that I hate Abu Dhabi. It's just not my favorite track. It's beautiful. And it actually was kind of interesting. I was doing some additional research here. So when they built Yas Island, just to the east of the capital there, it was a blank canvas for them to kind of build whatever they wanted. It took 11 years and $40 billion later with a B. They're nearly done with the whole complex, 7 hotels. Ferrari has an indoor theme park because Ferrari. There's a mall, a water park, a golf course, a beach, a concert area, and a nightclub. Just amazing. But back to the track. It's 58 laps, 3.2 miles long. And Rob, why don't you talk a little about some of the people who have won and the constructors who have won there?
Yeah, sure. So I was kind of looking at the repeat winners. We've got Lewis with 5, and this is going to be his one last chance to try to make this a win for the season. So although Merc have finally got themselves a win this year, if they can keep the pace going next week, the Merc has always run well on this track, and we don't know how the new cars run on this track, so who knows? I'm actually coming round to thinking that the way Merc are going at the moment, that we could see another good showing from them there. They seem to have got this low running sorted. The porpoising we haven't even talked about for the second half of the season. So anyway, Lewis has got 5.
I mean, it's Yas Marina. There's porpoising. I had to do it one more time. It's probably never coming back again.
Seb on 3. He's not adding to that. Max on 2. He could add to that. And then we've got a handful of single winners. Kimi Räikkönen, Valtteri, and Nico. I must have missed that in the notes.
You missed Nico Rosberg.
Whatever. Which means that the constructors is Mercedes with 6, Red Bull with 5, McLaren with 1, and Lotus Renault with 1, which was Kimi's. How did a Lotus Renault ever win a race? But they did. So you always like the stats around where people have won it from, so why don't you knock yourself out on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I recognize these are historical, and they don't necessarily predict future performance of your stock portfolio, but only once in the 13 races has anyone won from anything other than the front row. So it's first and second has won 12 of the 13 races. However, there was once a fourth-place starter who won. So it's not all hope is lost, but quality will be very important.
Yeah, but it will. But like I said, new cars don't seem to get kind of stuck in the procession as much. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward. And my last little stat that I found, which I actually kind of vaguely remember now once I kind of saw it on probably Wikipedia, was David Coulthard doing donuts on the helipad on the top of that hotel, the Burj Al Arab Hotel, to celebrate Red Bull's title win. They had him doing donuts at the top of a skyscraper, which I'm surely the insurance can't have backed that one, right? I mean,
I wonder if he had a parachute on. Quickly get out of there if things went haywire. Yeah, you make a good point. And I highlighted the fact that the cars were following so closely, and the battles would last many laps in Brazil. And Brazil, you're right, was a great track and amazing weekend. I wonder if the same way Austria, which usually disappointed from a racing perspective, but this year was great, even aside from Carlos's ECE situation where he had the external combustion engine. I wonder if we'll see a good Abu Dhabi race because of the cars, the following, and the way we have, let's be honest, right? I mean, maybe Ferrari turns their engines back up a little and we get, something out of them. Mercedes is on a roll. Red Bull, obviously Max doesn't give a crap about where he stands in the standings. He's going to be the first to the checkered flag. Teammates be damned. And so you got 6 guys at the front who have a shot, and then you've got the Alpines who are really coming on pretty strong. Valtteri's looking like a world beater. Seb is saying farewell. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to see this.
Yeah, I was looking back at some of the races that there's only been a handful of races that have been dull this year, and they haven't been like an inverse where that track is traditionally amazing, and this year's cars have screwed the pooch, and we've had poor races.
Right.
We've had poor races on tracks that we kind of usually have poor races on. Even the new cars haven't been enough to save it, right? So yeah, I'm looking at you, Mexico. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. It's got a couple of things going for it because it usually delivers a safety car, as we kind of maybe remember from last year.
Was there one? I don't remember.
Apparently, I
Yeah,
looked through
let's
the
not
notes.
talk
There was
about it, though.
something
Let's
to do with
just-
Latifi, but I didn't really read it. It's one for me to look into another time.
Yeah. don't wanna
But I'm
talk
looking
about
forward to it, and I am looking forward to the fact that we're going to hit the big 5-0. Like I said at the beginning, can't believe we've gone this long. So this will be a 50th episode and our first full season doing the pod. So we're going to have to come up with something special next week. Special DRS guest. So if there's anybody out there listening who's like super famous or knows somebody super famous and wants to get like Brad Pitt on to do DRS, then we'll obviously shun him for any of the true dirty siders that listen every week. But
We are also saying goodbye, though. Let's just highlight this to 3 drivers. So we're saying goodbye to Nicky Latifi. It'll be his last race for Williams and likely his last race in F1, but who knows? Could come back at some point. We have Seb retiring. So, I mean, he won the inaugural race at Abu Dhabi, and so we say goodbye to Seb as he rides off into the sunset in his eco-powered scooter. And then we lose Danny Rick from the grid, who may or may not be a reserve driver for maybe or maybe not Red Bull or Mercedes. We really don't know. Maybe not. We'll find out. But anyway, those things. And
another question
where's
mark.
Mick? Yeah,
Where's Mick going to end up? I mean,
please let's not have Nico Hulkenberger sit
I
in
don't
that seat.
see that Mick
It
has
doesn't
done.
make sense.
Yeah, I just stick with that pairing. Haas have done really well.
Yeah.
Done much better than everybody thought this year. Whether or not they get points in the final race of the season, I think they can hold their head up high and say we've had a damn good year.
They're an
and
eighth.
They got a good driver pairing, so
They're an
stick with
eighth,
it, Haas.
sitting on 37 points, 2 ahead of Alpha Tauri at ninth and 35 points. And that's a big financial difference if they can hold that gap. And Mick has contributed a lot in the second half of the year. So please, hang on to Mick. Can someone get Gene Haas on the phone? And
Maybe we
make
can
that happen?
get Gunther on DRS next week.
Yeah.
Convince
He's busy.
him, right?
He's
busy, but with
it's
the
a
dirty
marina.
side,
He's got
so-
the Steiner ship to worry about.
Oh, he's got the boat. Yeah, that's true. And on that terrible disappointment.
That's a different show.
I think it's time for us to wrap it up because this has been a longer show, but I think you'll agree it was a banger of a weekend with so much to talk about that we couldn't possibly crush it in. So thank you for listening again, and we look forward to you joining us on the Big 5-0 next week from, as Paul would say, Land of the Camels, Abu Dhabi.